Hello and welcome to Legally Consumed, a consumer products podcast by the consumer products law firm located in Melbourne, Australia. I'm Raf Goldenberg and I'm joined by co-hosts Kay Ho and Tiffany Lucas. We are members of the team at CIE Legal.
On Legally Consumed, we chat with consumer products company executives, members of their council and industry experts to give us a peek into their journeys as people. We explore industry-changing ideas and even share tips and tricks on how to navigate the consumer products space.
This season, we will feature guests from multiple consumer product sectors, including the automotive, retail, advertising and insights, food, beverage and primary production, and franchising sectors. We'll also feature guests from the wider supply chain.
Welcome, Liam Creedon. Liam is the CFO at Mansfields, a contract food manufacturer based in Melbourne that also provides R&D services. Mansfields is a company that not everyone in Australia will have heard of, but it's almost certain that most Australians will have eaten something that was made in Mansfields' production facility. They are one of the leading contract dry food manufacturers in Australia and a really interesting business, and we hope that Liam will give us a bit of an insight. So welcome, Liam. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Raf. I'm really happy to be here.
Well, Liam, it's great to have you. We always like to introduce our guests by just trying to get to know them a little bit. So maybe if we could start by you telling us a little bit about your work history and how you got to Mansfield and where you started.
Yep, not a problem, Raf. So I am an accountant by trade, hence the CFO title. After sort of university, doing commerce and economics degrees and wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but ended up in restructuring, working for a firm called Ferrier Hodgson, which is somewhere that I think was a really great sort of place to get a foundational skills, because I worked across a variety of industries, working on largely insolvency and restructuring matters, some of the largest sort of corporate collapses in Australia. Think sort of Dick Smith, Payless Shoes, Colorado Group, and sort of the retail space, among sort of others in mining and resources and manufacturing as well. And so through that, after about 12 years, went for a little bit of change, and I'd had done some work in the food manufacturing space and some large restructurings up in Sydney. Moving back to Melbourne for family reasons, I ended up going for a change and taking up a job at Mansfields, a contract food manufacturing business.
And so how long have you been with Mansfields, Liam?
I'm coming up on 3 years in February, so it's a good amount of time to have really sort of sunk my teeth into the business and gotten to understand it and see what we can do to change things.
And we are a consumer products podcast, so we also ask our guests what was the first thing they bought with their first paycheck.
I think it took a couple of paychecks, but my first ever sort of major purchase was a car stereo for I can't remember what 90s year model it was, but it was a Mitsubishi Magna that had a tape deck that really needed a CD player for a young person to have a modicum of coolness, I guess.
Yeah. I also had a Magna for a while there, actually. Cool. So I am now going to throw to Tiff, who's going to ask you some questions about Mansfield and what you do there.
Thank you. So I guess the first thing I'm interested in hearing more about is just tell us about Mansfields. Like, what is contract manufacturing? Maybe we should start there.
Yep, not a problem at all. And so we are a food manufacturing business, and maybe unfortunately for a consumer podcast, we don't have any brands. We don't own any brands ourselves. We exist purely to do things that brand owners can't do themselves for a variety of reasons. And that might be because they've got a particular product that has an allergen in it that they don't want in their own factory. It may be that what we're doing in our factory is a product that they cannot make in their factory, and they don't want to invest because the scale isn't there for them to justify investing in it themselves. It may be the case, as with several of our customers, is they're not interested in manufacturing. They are brands, they're sales and marketing businesses, they're product developers. That's their culture and identity. They don't want to sort of know about the nitty gritty of how do we put this together and create it. We want to invest in the ideas, the selling, the marketing part. and just let someone else completely take care of that other part of the business and the value chain for us. So what we do is we partner with brands, and really we're there to do what they don't want to do themselves for those reasons. It's a food manufacturing business with a very large scale, a huge number of arrays of packaging formats that we would deal with across 3 different sites, working for some of the biggest brands in the country. Think Mondelez, Kraft, Heinz, Coca-Cola, big multinationals, but we also work with a lot of locally owned brilliant brands like Carmen's or No Shoe as well, really helping those businesses do what they need to do to maintain their great products in the market.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. And it's been going for a very long time, hasn't it? Tell us a little bit about the history, I guess.
Yeah, so the Mansfields business itself was founded, I think it was about 1972. So we're just over 50 years that we've been going. It's been a few different iterations of what it does over the time, always sort of contract manufacturing. I think many, many years ago, it might have dabbled in other spaces, think like pharmaceuticals, like or shampoos and other types of products. But this day and age, we're strictly food and almost entirely dry foods. When I say dry food, things like a powder, so like something you would add water to create a beverage, a hot beverage or a cold beverage, or just particulates, things like oats or cereals or other foods like that. So what we don't deal with like liquids or things that within the manufacturing process you might have to cook up as part of it. We sort of blend and mix, and packing is our sort of strength.
Do you make chocolate?
We don't make chocolate, but we do pack chocolate in various formats for
So you're sort of a chocolate factory.
for clients. So we do have chocolate coming through, which is very nice for the team, indeed. And then we're also a family-owned business as well, as probably important part of our history. I think since about the 80s, the business was acquired by Alan Humbert, and then subsequently acquired by his son Jeff Humbert in the early 2000s. So we're family owned 100%, and it's always largely been that way.
Yeah, fantastic. I love those stories, family-owned businesses that have grown and grown. It's a great story, and usually a really great place to work.
Yes, indeed. It is nice having sort of a boss who's also the owner, who's the only director and shareholder. So as a CFO, it's very easy to manage that aspect of the business.
Not so many layers and red tape.
Get the decisions made. And how many people work in the business, roughly?
So we have roughly 80 employees that we have directly on the books. The majority of those would be very permanent roles to do with all sort of the service, obviously the admin and finance function, all of the leadership team within production, our dispatch logistics side of it. And then most of our machine operators and fitters also are our employees. Because we're contract manufacturers, we don't control our destiny as to what our clients are going to order this month versus next month. So we also rely on labor hire to really pump that volume up if the demand is there, and bring it back down. So we could swell to over 130, 140 people on a shift or across the business if the demand is there.
And are you at one site or multiple sites?
So we have 3 sites. They're congruent at the moment, which is great, because I think over the history of the business, it has had sites at different locations, but we have 3 different factories, but they all are next to each other. So we can move goods without having to take them onto the roads now, that's absolutely fantastic. I would love for the whole thing to be under one roof, but I can only dream on that part.
And so when you're working with a client, a brand, you said, you don't ever know really what they're going to need or want as time goes on. And so how do you actually work with them? Like, what stage do they come to you, and how do you get involved? And do you source the materials, or do they? And how does that all work?
Yeah. So it's all very client specific. My favorite clients are the ones that know what they want, have done the work, and will source the materials and say, here it is, turn it into this, and we'll pay you to do that. And that's it. Because as a CFO, that's a very light working capital. I don't need to have our product developers spend time on it.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And we do that particularly for a couple of the multinationals who really want to control every aspect of procurement and development. But a lot of our clients at the smaller side, they may ask us to help them develop. We won't start with a blank piece of paper. We really need them to refine what they're looking for. A lot of them will have an idea and come to say, I've got an idea. We say, go back really think about flavor profiles, the product, the packaging format, a benchmark you want us to work towards, because we could develop 100 versions, but that's not our business. We don't make money coming up with the ideas. That's the sales and marketing and branding people. We're just the manufacturers. So our product developers are really here to support you, taking it from 20 to 30% there to a finished product, not starting from scratch. And those people will say, if we have the suppliers, we will buy for them all that product. We'll source everything and turn it into a finished product. So it's a full service, we call that, offering, which again, for some of our clients is required because they don't have that capability in-house, or they don't have a scale whereby them doing it themselves generates any benefit. Whereas for a lot of our larger clients, they'll say, actually, this sugar or this flour or these oats, buy them off our contract with this supplier because we've already negotiated a scale.
Yeah.
Gets us a better price.
That makes sense. So it's quite bespoke.
It's very,
client to
very
client.
bespoke for every client.
Yep.
We'll sort of try to push them in a way that suits us, but a lot of them, if we do that, when we hand over control of sort of the supply chain, that sometimes leads to worse outcomes than just us doing it ourselves.
And so that full service offering, is that unique in the space, in the industry, or do most contract manufacturers do that?
I don't think it's unique. I think everyone ends up with sort of different offerings for different clients, depending on the type of client they're dealing with. I think in some of the maybe the less evolved areas, think sports nutrition and proteins, there's a bit more of an expectation of those brand owners because they're smaller sort of startups that someone like us would take care of a lot more of it for them than all the larger food players, the multinationals that really might say, you know what, we want to control you. You're a function for us.
Yeah.
And just do these parts.
With the product development stuff that you do, you talked about taking some products that are kind of 30% there and then finishing them off. Can you give some examples of the types of food products that you help bring to life from a sort of an idea or a brief to like the product on the shelf?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the work we do at the moment is the supermarkets themselves, who are obviously really pushing their private label and own brand agenda. So they will quite often come to us, and particularly Aldi is a good example because they mostly don't have their brands on the shelf. They have their own brands, but they will come and say, hey, we've seen this other product in the other supermarkets, the brand owner, we like this about it, or we like these flavors, but not these. What can we do to sort of round that out into an offering that we could put onto our shelves?
Okay.
And so that's the kind of example of where we could do that. Or it might be just a major brand owner saying, hey, we've got this idea of this product that we've seen in the US. We want to bring it to Australia. Here's a benchmark, but we're going to have to change a few things, maybe because it's got too much sugar or there's caffeine beyond the allowable levels in Australia. How do we change that or change the formulation to make it something we could do in Australia?
Yeah. And so in that Aldi example, I guess you're almost in sort of helping invent a new product for them. So would that be like a muesli bar or
the foods we sort of do? A lot of the things like instant soups or gravy powders, recipe bases or flavor bases, but they're powdered. They will often say, hey, here's an assortment of products as a benchmark. We want to arrange along those lines. Can you go and make those for us?
Yeah, right. They're interesting.
And so what about your role? Tell us day to day, what do you do and what does that look like?
Yep. So obviously the finance function all sits with me, but because we are a family-owned business, we're quite light in that team because we don't have much by way of reporting obligations, and we do have some quite strong processes that mean I actually spend probably the majority of my time not on the finance function. I like to not stick my nose in, but take a very keen interest across the entire business and bring a commercial lens and also just a different lens to it. So whether that's supply chain and all that, which is pretty normal for a CFO, but I'm very heavily sort of interested in contributing to production or planning or capital procurement or issues and things within the factory, because I do bring a different lens compared to some other people. And one of our great strengths actually at Mansfields is we have very long-standing employees, production managers with 38 years of experience, operations manager with over 25 years of experience in the business. And so sometimes just taking a different lens or a different view of things can help us solve a problem. So I do like to get into the factory as often as I can and sort of look at what we're doing and ask ideas or questions of how can we do this better or differently with my ability to sort of bring a very quick sort of commercial view of, is that a good idea or a bad idea for us from a commercial perspective.
So when you look at, how you might make it more efficient or the kind of things you were just talking about adding value to, is there a big technology component involved in that? And what does the technology landscape look like for you in the business?
So I am really fortunate that when I joined Mansfields, there was already a really great ERP system in the business. So we're
ERP, what is that?
enterprise resource planning. So it covers from our purchasing to warehouse management and inventory management through to managing the formulations and the manufacturing side of our business, right through to the accounting function and even our asset register, all built into one system that uses some off-the-shelf components, but had a large amount of it purpose-built for our business.
Oh, wow.
Has luckily meant that we actually have incredibly rich data on our manufacturing. And that system is great because it tracks for food safety reasons, and a lot of our quality is built in that system as well. But who's working in what room at what time and where. So we've got brilliant data on production line efficiency, how we're going against costed rates. Do we have who is in a production line, how many people, and we can go and compare that data to the real world, look at, hey, how can we do better? Because we're coming from a great base of, I almost, with a few clicks of a mouse, can look at the profitability of a line based on how it should be running, and then go look at it and see, hang on, is it doing what it should be doing or not? So we've got a really good foundation there. All of our line operators are trained to use that ERP as well. So we're getting a near live view of how well we're performing in the factory throughout the day.
It sounds like that'd be really valuable for tendering for new business as well, being able to kind of get a pretty deep and close understanding of the cost to you of making something with that data. I mean, I think that must be pretty useful as well.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Tendering is a really difficult part of what we do because people are asking you to tell them, what does it cost to do this thing that you've never done before? Or we might have some experience, but there's a lot of discussion that happens when we're tendering with the various aspects of our team because someone will just want to give you the bare bones of what they're doing. A lot of clients don't even want to tell you what their project is. They just want a cost because it's secret. But we've got to know what production line will we do it on, what equipment's needed, what are the special components of it? Is there special allergen issues that need to be managed? Is there special cleaning? How long is the production run going to be? Because the setup time and the clean can actually end up being a very large component of the cost. And then just how efficient does whatever they need actually work on our equipment? Because production equipment might be great for doing one product one day, and you can put what you think is almost an identical product through it the next day, and it runs horribly.
That's actually something you said made me think you probably have had to deal with something that was always fairly close to my heart, which is kosher certification. Would you have
Yes.
some of your products have to be kosher certified, and people check the factory and
Yes.
make sure the ingredients are kosher and not contaminated and so forth?
Yeah, that forms part of a really large quality assurance and compliance function that we have. So broadly speaking, that starts in procurement with an approved supplier program and bringing everyone on board on the right terms and signing up to sort of a supplier code with us. And then that sort of flows through to the processes and procedures within the factory. But then I suppose you can sort of break that then down into three sort of groups. If we have sort of general food audits, things like HACCP or BRC certification, which are generals, and then a lot of the multinational clients do their own audit. And the supermarkets, other than Aldi, they want to do their own audits as well. And then you go into what we'd call sort of more specialty audits that need to happen. So kosher, halal, or organic, rainforest alliance, palm oil, all of these other audits that need to happen for all those little claims that you'll see in a box. That, there's a logo there. Not understanding there is a huge amount of work behind the scenes to put that logo on the box.
Wow.
So you have to stay across all those different types of certifications then, and you have a team that's focused on that or something.
Luckily, we have a quality assurance and compliance manager that stays across that with her team. And it feels almost every other week there is some sort of audit or review happening to maintain all of those certifications.
And the other aspect that you mentioned earlier is food safety is part of that too, right? So how do you monitor that? How do you test it? What does that look like, that component?
Yeah. So again, very client specific. Every client will have their specifications of what testing from a micro or a sensory point of view. So if we're doing something with very specific allergen requirements, we're declaring this is gluten-free or dairy-free. There's obviously a lot of validation work that goes into that. So making sure the production line before we, even start needs to be cleared. Then you've got the product testing to make sure there's no issues there. And we also then do a sensory test of everything we make in our factory, gets cooked up in a quality kitchen to make sure that it's performing and tastes the way it should compared to a benchmark. If it's a cake mix, for example, to make sure it's actually cooking the way it should following the instructions, to ensure that, okay, there are 3 or 4 fail-safes along the way, but we don't want to get to something and go, hey, some ingredient's been missed and that's caused the product to not perform.
So is someone's job to eat cakes?
Yes, quality controllers in the quality control kitchen.
Probably the wrong
yes.
business.
Yeah.
You can come out anytime.
And there's such a thing as, is it flavor consultants as well? Like the people who kind of advise as it's being made to get the flavor that you're looking for.
We've more recently really pushed hard into sports nutrition. So weight loss shakes or protein shakes, greens and those kinds of powders. And with the proteins in particular, there are a lot of sort of unique flavors that get pushed there. And even some of the standard ones, clients can be very, very particular about the flavor profile they want their shake to have.
Yeah.
And so our developers do a lot of work with flavor houses to try and get the right strawberry flavor, the right chocolate flavor, the right peanut butter flavor or whatever it is. And they might go through 30, 40, 50 different flavors in different strengths to really get our client happy, because they can be very, very particular. And if you do get it wrong, particularly with a plant protein, I think the taste can turn bad pretty quickly.
Yeah, right. Switching gears a little bit, we are a law firm, so we do want to hear a little bit about, I know a little bit about it from having worked with you, but how you deal with legal issues, what are the types of things that pop up that you can talk about, obviously, and some of the challenges you have to tackle from, a legal and a regulatory standpoint.
Yeah. Look, I think from a legal point of view, outside of sort of the general everyday legal thing, which yourselves at CAE help us out with on most of, the HR, the property side, a lot of time spent negotiating contracts with the multinationals. The regulatory side for us is largely driven by our clients, which is good. A lot of the multinationals in particular, they've got teams, they're a bit ahead of the curve on requirements. And so if there is something new coming from a food safety or the big thing at the moment is environment and sustainability, they're sort of onto us before anything else about, hey, we've got this coming up because we're now obligated to do something. Therefore, you guys are joining the party.
Yeah.
And so legally, there's not too much. It's really around, I guess, compliance side with either changing food safety standards, which probably isn't a big thing, more around reporting. So the one that everyone's on at the moment is the environmental reporting or carbon reporting, or the large companies are in the process of working out their sort of scope 1, 2, 3 emissions. Yeah. And therefore, here's the big surveys of, we want to know about, every kilojoule of electricity, every piece bit of gas, every bit of water that went through the plant, what related to us, please. And a whole huge questionnaire of other things that they sort of need to know to help them report. So that's the large one at the moment. And that's actually been a challenge for us because the team's not been set up to do that. We don't have a huge team to deal with a lot of these issues, being a smaller family-owned business, but we do get the benefit of leaning on some of these bigger clients to say, hey, that's great, but give us some support on how we can answer these or how we go about these.
Yeah. On the flip side, we have clients as well getting asked those questions on things like IT security and those IT security questionnaires. And after a while, after they've answered enough of them, developing their own little document and go, does this answer your questions? But I can imagine with the environmental stuff, that's pretty bespoke and deep area of investigation. I guess it's a bit of a sensitive one, but I could imagine with food, things can go wrong. You talked about allergies before and other things, I guess, contamination and the like. And as the contract manufacturer, I can imagine when things do go wrong and it's the brand who's up in lights. What's the dynamic like there with do those things happen, and how do those things sort of get
Yeah.
sorted out?
Going to touch some wood here. Good. In the last 3 years that I've been at Mansfields, we haven't had any product recalls of products we've produced.
Wow.
There are the occasional sort of consumer complaints. There's always consumer complaints. A lot of them are someone just, oh, I didn't like the look of something or whatever. It's rare that they're because there's something actually wrong with the product, but occasionally you will get issues like a sachet didn't seal correctly or something like that they crop up. It happens. We work really well with all our clients on how to manage that. We're fortunate that most of our clients understand that when something like that happens, they know not to panic as well. There's a process to go through, and our team's been very good at, or is very good at dealing with those sort of either consumer complaints or little issues that arise. Investigations happen all the time. They're very quick to resolve usually. And so I'm lucky to have not have to witnessed a full product recall.
Yeah.
But I can understand, obviously, when that happens, we have obviously contracts in place that sort of set mechanisms for how do we deal with that? How do we agree a path forward? Who's responsible for what? In terms of notifications, dealing with issues, investigations, and typically our clients want to control that process.
I can imagine. You mentioned the sort of questionnaires you're getting from clients about environmental related things and sustainability with your production facility. That was a question I was interested in hearing a bit more about. Consumers, the ones who end up buying these products now, are so focused on environment, sustainability, and that's sort of driven your clients to be very focused on it. Have you had to change the way operationally things look to evolve with that in terms of the equipment, the energy used, the packaging used? Like, have you seen a change in that, or is it?
Absolutely. Packaging is a really hot topic in the industry at the moment.
Yeah.
There's an organisation called APCO, or the Australian Packaging Covenant Organisation, that sets sort of targets for all the brand owners and all major brand owners, supermarkets, everyone is signed up to this covenant around what we're trying to achieve around sort of really coming back to that circular economy of reduce, reuse, recycle, compost, and all that. Obviously, there's a priority in what we do there. And so some of that is really hard rules around, hey, this piece of packaging that was fine today, that's not going to be fine tomorrow. So you are going to have to change this. And we could be talking about that's 2 entire production lines that make that existing packaging. And you're saying, now we can't. So that is a really big evolving piece for us at the moment. We've just actually commissioned in December a new production line to deal with one of those changes, taking metal out of a product and replacing it with paper so that it becomes a fully paper product, or more ticking that new recyclable rule. We've got another one of those lines that we'll commission in February, March coming as well. Massive investment with our packaging partner on that. And so it's a constant moving thing because soft plastics at the moment, there is no national consistent approach to that. There are rules around what type of soft plastic will be compliant and not compliant, but at the end of the day, there is no recycling scheme for it. We can no longer return it to store. There are councils doing sort of pilot programs to take that and recycle it, turning it into park benches or plastic pallets maybe. But I think we're still years away from having an approach, but our clients have already started saying, hey, no, even though it's still going in the bin, we want you to change this from this type of plastic to this type of plastic because we want to tick the rules now rather than waiting for the rules to actually mean something.
Yeah. And probably also in some cases want to say to their customers, hey, we're different. We're really focused on the environment and so much so that we're looking at these things. We see some of the other side of that when we're helping look at, greenwashing and getting it under the skin of what actually is being done and what, when these claims are being made.
Yeah. And it is really important to most of our clients that we have a recycling logo or all of the components being a recycling logo on their packaging rather than the bin logo. And if it was easy, it would have just happened. Unfortunately, when we move to a lot of these sustainable formats, there's something that has to give, and that might be the barrier property of the packaging is no longer as strong. So there could be a shelf life issue if they move to that. Or it may be the cost of this sustainable version of this plastic is double the cost of the incumbent one. Someone's going to have to pay for that. That's a barrier. And then it might just be as well, which is what we found with a lot of the sustainable packaging formats we've been testing, is they tick the box from the rules point of view, but they don't work on the machinery. They don't seal, or they don't perform. And so when we say to the client, if you're going to use this plastic, your throughput is going to diminish dramatically, which means the cost is going to have to go the opposite direction. And so if it was easy, we would have solved a lot of these problems already.
Yeah.
And the reason we haven't is obviously collecting soft plastics, recycling them is a really difficult thing to do. But even within the manufacturing environment, there's a lot that needs to happen there. And everyone needs to align, because people need to make it. We need to use it during production, but the recycling businesses as well. And this goes across both fibers, glass, rigid plastic, soft plastic. They want to dictate what they want. They don't want contaminants in their recycling streams. And so you'll see things like a lot of, I think, colored rigid plastics that, bottles that used to be green or colored are turning clear, because it's removing those colors makes those products easier to recycle.
Yeah, okay. There you go. Fascinating. And I guess just to sort of wrap up from my side, like Mansfield's been around for more than 50 years. So looking ahead, what do you see over the horizon if you were to kind of cast your mind 10, 20 years from now? Like, do you think things look different for Mansfield and for food manufacturing in Australia?
Food manufacturing in Australia, and probably, manufacturing in general, is a really tough industry. We don't deal directly with the consumer. A lot of people struggle to see the value relative to that sales, marketing, branding aspect, where it's much more tangible to the end consumer, and people go, I'll pay for the brand, but someone's made something that's not the value add for me. Where it's difficult for us is sort of when we're making investment decisions, and all manufacturing is generally very capital intensive. Relatively speaking, Australia is a very small country compared to all of our neighbours and the rest of the world. And so to be competitive in what we do becomes increasingly difficult, because if we want to invest in a new production line, the machinery that we buy typically can produce more than what we would need for our clients in Australia, usually. And so when you're competing against factories in other parts of the world servicing much broader populations with production lines doing the same thing all day, every day, versus what we do as sort of a contract manufacturer, but we chop and change for this client to that client in different needs. Maintaining that efficiency in Melbourne and maintaining the type of equipment and scale that you need compared to some of those offerings, it is really tough. We have seen some really good examples of people trying to offshore certain things and going, actually, that doesn't work for us. We need to manufacture much closer to our point of sale, because one of the good strengths of our very dominant supermarket chains are they don't give brand owners 6 months or 12 months notice of when they want to do a special or when they want things to happen. Plans can change very quickly. And what we've found is clients that are manufacturing things offshore are unable to respond, obviously, as quickly as people having it manufactured locally. So we have found some demand, at least, or some protection there, that people still prefer to be here, even if it is a little bit higher in cost, because they need to be closer to their consumer, particularly for food products where we have short shelf lives or rigid rules from the supermarkets around how old something can be before it's deemed no longer acceptable. Even if it does have, something with a 12-month shelf life, they'll typically say we still need to have 9 months left on that shelf life, otherwise it'll be rejected.
Yeah, right.
But do you also see that there's something about food in particular that people want it to be made in Australia? Is that a consumer concern, or?
I think that's different consumers. For some, yeah, absolutely. For others, it's very much a price point. We do a lot of, obviously, private label product that's designed to go in at the cheapest possible price. Talking to the buyers of those products, I don't get the sense the provenance of the raw materials is ultimately the concern of their consumer. They're looking for the cheapest price. And I think we, not one of our examples, but I think one of the big ones at the moment is tin tomatoes, where the product coming from Shepparton costs $1 more than the product that somehow comes from Italy. And the consumer, I think, isn't overly concerned, particularly in the current climate. They're focused on their household budget.
Yep.
And maybe, unfortunately, we're all spending too much on our households. And food prices in Australia, I think globally, they're not outrageous. In fact, I think most things are quite well priced. We just spend our money elsewhere.
But we have seen, as a question I was going to ask you, because we have seen, and with the cost of living crisis and grocery bills have risen a lot. Has that flowed through to your business at all?
I think we have some protection from that by doing both branded offering and private label products. You sort of see, okay, there's some cutbacks in, let's call them, more discretionary areas. But at the same time, when people are eating out less, even though the bills are higher, they are spending more at the supermarkets, probably because they're eating at home more as well. And that then flows through obviously to us. So we've not seen a top line overall impact from it, but there's definitely a product mix change that occurs.
Yeah, and I guess if you're doing both premium and then like home brand products, it probably gives you a bit of a hedge.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting. So we generally finish our podcast by asking a bit of an abstract question here. So if you were the Prime Minister of Australia for a day, what law would you change?
Oh, is this in my self-interest or in the interest of the
Either.
business?
It can be anything you want.
Or both.
Putting my CFO hat on, thinking about what would make my life a lot easier, there was a law that was introduced a handful of years ago called payment times reporting, which basically made large businesses have to put onto a register how fast they pay their small business suppliers. We don't tick that box, but I spend an awful lot of time negotiating with multi-billion-dollar companies why 90 or 120-day payment terms are unacceptable to us. I would love just a little tweak to those payment times reporting laws to maybe look at the relativity of the bargaining power of the two parties to maybe bring that in, because they all report 30 days. So they say, oh, if you tick the box there, we'll pay you much faster. But if you don't, let's negotiate on our terms, please. And
Right.
so that would certainly free up a lot of my time. I think the other one, if I could be the Premier of Victoria for a minute now, please. The other one that was a real kick in the guts for us in the last year was the land tax near doubled. And now there's commercial leases. They pass that on to the business owners. So I look at, and that's not just us, that's our entire manufacturing hub in the southeast of Melbourne. We don't get the benefit of the many, many times increases that the property owners have got, but we happen to be the ones burdened with the land tax bill that's doubled, which was a really big sting to a lot of businesses actually that I know of in the area as well as ourselves. So I'd just like to reverse that one along the Premier.
I don't think you're alone in that.
Well, thank you, Liam. That was really fascinating. It was great to have you come in and tell us about you and about Mansfield. Thank you again, and all the best for the Mansfield business.
Thank you, Raf. Thank you, Tiff.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Legally Consumed, a consumer products podcast by the Consumer Products Law Firm. This was presented by Raf Goldenberg, Keho, and Tiffany Lucas from CIE Legal. Our theme song is by our very own CIE Legal house band, which comprises the two CIE Legal Andrews, Andrew Marr and Andrew Thompson.
The content of this podcast is for general information only and is not to be used for specific advice purposes or for formulating decisions.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, or Spotify, and head to our LinkedIn page @CIE Legal for the latest updates on our next episodes and other content from our podcast conversations. Check out our website to listen to our range of episodes and find additional free information at www.cielegal.com.au. To get in contact with CIE Legal about consumer products legal services, reach out to us on info@cielegal.com.au. Thanks again for listening to Legally Consumed, and see you all in the next episode.